Hey, Amanda, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited about what we're going to be talking about today, and it's going to make a big impact on people.
Thank you for having me. This is actually my first podcast interview, and I think about 2 years because I had to take a
Really?
hi yeah, because I had to take a hiatus for a while. So I'm honored to be here and sharing my story
Okay.
again.
Yes. So you sort of took a break from podcasting?
Yeah, I took a break from like business period and making money because well, I met my husband. He's been an expat for about 10 years, so he's been living in and out of the US for about 10 years. That
Yeah.
was a dream I always had. Ended up meeting him. We're traveling around all over the place and moved to Mexico and had to plan a wedding. So it was just a couple years there where podcasting was not at the top of the priority list.
Right, right. Yeah. So what was it like for you taking a break from your business?
Well, I took a forced break from my business. And what I mean by a forced break was for people who don't know my background, I spent, I started an online business in 2010. So I'm pretty much a dinosaur in this space. I've seen all the things. That's why when
Yes.
people get stressed out about new regulations and things, I'm just like, meh, whatever. Cause I've seen so many of them like
Yeah.
come and go and trends and all kinds of stuff. So I started in 2010 and I spent 8 years as a financial writer and expert. So I did marketing for banks and I would get hired as a spokesperson for like TransUnion or Capital One when they had a new product coming out. And I would go do media tours and stuff like that on their behalf. So I did that for about 8 years. 2017, I start transitioning. I start teaching people business because I realized number one, freelance writing is not scalable. And number two, I had this like weird intuition, which has turned out to be correct because now I see a lot of people who remained in that space having this problem, which is one good market correction and we're all screwed. Like they're just going to cut the marketing teams.
Wow.
Yeah. So I basically started teaching people how to build an online business because that's what I had done and that's what I was being asked. And then my specialization became in sales because I'd been in sales since I was 20 years old. So I would teach people, hey, here's how to have conversations without being an asshole, right? Here's how to get the deal done without pressuring people. And actually understanding the skill sets and the psychologies. That's what I became known for. So that started growing very quickly. I was on my way to a seven-figure business. I started having six-figure months. That was back at the end of 2021. And I ended up triggering an ancestral trauma. Not only an ancestral trauma, but also childhood trauma from starting to have these six-figure months. Add in, yeah. Oh,
Tell me about that. Stop right there.
oh, wait, there's more.
Okay.
There's one more thing to add to the pressure of this, which is that my father was in and out of the hospital for 8 months at the same time, and I almost lost him twice. So it was one of those things where like life was lifing really hard. And I started to realize, like, oh, wait a second, I can't just like force myself to do stuff like I used to. Like I have no motivation to work out. I love to work out. I can't meditate. I've been meditating for 10 years. I can't sit still for more than 30 seconds. And my panic attacks are coming back. I knew a part of it was obviously the stress of what was going on with my father, but there was something else happening because normally I'm able to just push through. And I was
Yes.
not able to push through. So I spent about like 3 months wondering what the hell was wrong with me.
Yeah.
I tried traditional therapy. That wasn't really working because it was a lot. And now I've done therapy in two different countries. So in the United States at the time, it felt like a lot of mothering energy to me. And that was just like
Yes.
not what I needed. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't working. Anyway, long story short, I'm doing what I call dramatic DMing, where I'm just like freaking out and I'm like DMing a bunch of people and making connections and working. And I end up meeting this expert in neuroscience. And I was going to interview her for my podcast, Make Money Your Honey. And I found out what she did. And I said, how much does it cost to hire you? Because I think there's something wrong with my brain.
Mm.
I would end up working with her for 6 months, and she would end up uncovering basically the fact that I had gone into a state of PTSD. She didn't tell me that at the time. She told me that a year later.
Yeah.
Uh, but basically, I had gone into a state of PTSD. I had triggered a lot of ancestral trauma that was pretty serious, and I didn't realize how serious it was because I thought it was just normal for the environment that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And then also some childhood trauma that came along with it. It was really the ancestral trauma more than anything. So
Yeah.
I'm working with her for like 6 months. My whole world is flipped upside down once I realize what's going on. And I realize I have to do life completely differently because I basically built all my businesses and my whole life based on survival programming, trauma from my family, trauma from my childhood. Uh,
Yeah.
I laugh about it now, but it was really intense back then. And I was like, I got to do life completely differently because I have not been, it hasn't been my life and what I want to do. I thought it was, but the subconscious was really the one running the show.
Yeah. So what part of your subconscious was running the show? What was the story? What was the motor that was driving?
Oh,
Of-
there were a lot of them. That all came out at the same time. It's like I went through an ego death. So one of the really intense ones, that when this expert in neuroscience figured it out, I said, "Oh my God, my entire childhood now makes sense." Was survivor's guilt, and I was playing out a pattern of survivor's guilt. I was very confused at first when she told me that. I'm like, my childhood was like relatively chill in comparison, like most people. She goes, it's not
Yeah.
yours, it's your parents and grandparents' survival's guilt from having fled the Cuban Revolution and having to have left family and countrymen behind. There's guilt there. They can't let life get too good. You're playing out the exact same pattern in your business and your life.
Right. Wow.
That
Yes.
was one of them. And that was the one that opened the entire Pandora's box of all of them. And I was like, oh, so that's why things would be kind of cool when I was a kid. And then there'd be some sort of crazy emergency that we would have to go deal with, which, by the way, my parents still do that.
Old habits
Right?
die hard. Yes.
Yeah. Old habits die hard. And also, that was a generation where like therapy wasn't a thing. Right.
No.
And these conversations that we're having now were not a thing.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them at all. They're just doing what they knew and they're not
Yeah.
even aware that they do
Yeah.
this. So the other thing that came up was money equals anxiety. I grew up in a household because I have immigrant parents who had to start over in different countries,
Yes.
where, and not because out of choice, but because they were forced into it,
Yes.
where, um, basically money equaled anxiety, right? We could have no money and there's anxiety. We could have money and there's anxiety. So the more money I made, the worse my anxiety got.
Mm. Makes total sense.
Right? Now in
It's like
retrospect, it
very
makes total
simple, right? Like
sense.
the body is very like stupid simple. Like
Yeah,
money equals anxiety, more of it, more anxiety.
mind blowing. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that was one of them. Then there was another one, which this one I dropped the quickest, which was I realized that I came from a lineage of very controlling women. And I was like, oh, that's where all the survival programming comes from. And I'm talking back to my great grandmother,
Yeah.
on my mother's side at least, and then at least to my great grandmother on my father's side.
Yeah.
Right. So on both sides, on one side, I came from a lineage of very controlling women because it was survival. They had to, there was no choice.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it wasn't controlling, but there was still a lot of survival. So as you can imagine, I'm putting all these things together and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to attract the husband that I want if I'm going through this. There's no way I'm going to be able to make money easily and scale a business. Like, I'm not going to be able to live life the way that I want to live if I don't start like redoing this. So that was another one that came up that was huge at the time that I didn't realize how far back it went in the lineage.
Wow. And so when you, I know this is like a little detail, but like when you were working with when this healer, this neurologist or neuroscientist rather, like what were you noticing? Like what was the process for you?
I think at first it was just shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, just complete shock at first, because when I tell you my life felt like it was flipped upside down, it literally felt like it was flipped upside down.
Wow.
And I was like, I can't go back to doing life the way I was doing it because I can't unknow what I know now.
Yes. Yes. And so you had to like reconfigure everything.
Literally everything, starting from the ground up. And the last thing that I reconfigured was the money. Be-
Wow.
yeah, because I had been chasing money my whole life out of survival and I neglected everything else. And I was like, well, what if I flip this on his head? And that was extremely uncomfortable, let me tell you. But eventually, it started to sort itself out and figure itself out. But anyway, within 4 months I worked with this person for 6 months, one-on-one. I did everything, the hypnosis, the energy healing, working with a neuroscientist. I did all the things. So I was like, I can't go back. Right. So we're just going to start resolving these things once and for all, because honestly, what's the alternative? I didn't think there was one. So I just kept
Right.
going. Um, so anyway, once I start making sense of these things,
Yeah.
right, then I'm like, you know what? I've been chasing money this whole time, but I'm actually ready to get married. How about I focus on that? 4 months later, I met my husband. So,
So what was the okay, so you're having these epiphanies. You start by having these panic attacks. You're like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I need to change something. And then you decide everything needs to change, right? You realize what the stories are, where they're coming from. Everything needs to change. What's the first thing you do?
well, the first thing I did was I kind of stopped focusing so much on doing business the way I had been doing it. I kind of became very anti-hustle for a
Okay.
while.
Yeah.
I think that was the first thing. I also really started focusing more on my femininity and my feminine energy. I understood the concepts. It's not like I was new to these
Yeah. What does that
concepts.
mean to you? Because that means different things to different people.
Being surrendered and trusting and
Okay.
letting the
Trust.
masculine lead.
Okay.
Now, at first, right, it was surrendering and trusting to some sort of higher power,
Yeah.
right? And being like, all right, well, my whole life is about to fall apart, or at least my life
Yeah.
as I knew it is about to fall apart. So I have to like really trust and surrender that I am taken care of. And it did
Yeah.
totally fall apart.
Wow.
Yeah, because my old life wasn't going to continue into my new life. So trust and surrender is probably the first thing. And then also a lot of trust and surrender around being taken care of and provided for, and money, and that money doesn't have to be a stressor. Men don't have to be a stressor. I think that probably trust and surrender is probably what I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about, you know, trust and surrender in the context of a family or a lineage where there's like control, that's like the hardest part. That is like the life task of the person that loves to control or that needs it or has been doing it habitually. That is like the whole freaking spiritual exercise.
Yep.
Yeah.
And boy, was it a spiritual exercise. And really around money was the hardest one. Like for some reason, once I understood it in the context of like dating and men, for some
Mhm.
reason, once I had cleared all that stuff or became aware
Yeah.
of that stuff, that one actually became a lot easier than it had been before. I
Okay.
don't know why, it just did. And then
Yeah.
money was actually the really hard one, because it was like, wait a minute, I've been making money this way for this long. How on earth am I supposed to change this and
Hmm.
actually get what it is that I desire? And then I ended up getting a 2-for-1, that my husband ends up being like a whiz at systems and ops and automations and systems.
Yeah.
That was not a part of my manifestation process, but I got a 2-for-1. I got a little
It
surprise there.
was.
Yeah. And then I got a 3-for-1 because he traveled all the time and lived in other countries, which was one of my dreams for years. So I was just like, oh,
Wow.
okay. And then I started gathering more evidence that I was the creator of my reality. And all I really needed to do was clear all the shit that is in the way of you getting what it is that you desire. I'd heard that
Yeah.
for 15 years. Now I understood it.
Yes, 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 yes. And so you went from having, like you said, six-figure months.
Hmm.
And so when you stopped, like what happened to the money? Like
Oh, it
the
went away. It disappeared. Yeah.
the money stopped coming in. It was like bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Or I would find ways to get rid of it. That was one of the reasons I knew something was off with my brain. I was finding ways to get rid of it.
Say more about that.
It was the money equals anxiety, so I didn't feel safe with the money. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Oh my God. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And how would you get rid of it?
Oh God, I'd hire people I didn't need to hire. I'd That's mostly it. I think I would like hire people didn't need to hire. I think that was the biggest one for me
Yeah.
actually, now that I
Yeah.
think about it. I don't
And did your
regret any
brain
of
used
it.
to
What was that?
Did your brain used to justify it? Like, oh, but of course I need to hire this person. And right, there were very good reasons for doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That I think that was the biggest one because I was a personal finance writer for 8 years. I wouldn't go
Yeah.
on like spending sprees or binges, right?
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, I need to hire this person. I need to do this. I need to do that in the business. That's how I
Yes.
would do it. Yeah.
And Amanda, I find it so fascinating that even though money equaled anxiety, you found your way in the financial field. How
I
did that?
know, but why do you think I ended up there? Because I'm like, I got to figure out money or I'm fucked in life. So that's how
Got
I ended up
okay. So it
there.
was a sense of urgency, a sense of like
Yeah.
the anxiety was the driver there.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, wow. Wow. And did you have like did you have like money saved when the money disappeared? Did you have money saved? Did you have like
Yes,
allocations and
and all the money that I had saved went into my own healing.
wow.
Because I said once I realized what was going on, I was like, I am going to spare no expense
Mm, mhm,
at
mhm.
putting myself back together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long was that period? You mentioned it previously, but like how
Mhm.
long was that period between you saying I'm done. I'm putting all of my energy into my healing until you started like coming back into your business in a whole different way.
Well, my husband helped a lot with this. So, it was kind of a joint effort because
Yeah.
we were friends for 6 months first.
Mm.
And actually part of the money that I lost was investing in a networking group where I met him. So,
Okay.
it all worked out.
Right? Like
Um,
what is it? The what do you call it? Like, you lose this, but you win this. Right.
I've learned there's no wasting money because even though
Yeah.
I was like in debt I didn't just lose the money. I got into debt up to my eyeballs, like really trying to figure out what was going on. And
Wow.
also like mistakes I'd made in my business and stuff like that. But I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
there's literally no such thing as wasting money because I maxed out a credit card trying to get into this networking group, and that networking group is where I met my husband.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. I
no
love
such
that.
thing. Anyway, that took a while to come around to, but anyway, he helped a lot with that because we were like colleagues and friends for like 6 months
Yeah.
first, and he noticed that I thought the answer was, oh, okay, in order for me to get ready for my husband, then I need to have like a totally automated business. Duh, right? Because I need space to be a wife and I need space to go travel. Like I can't be working like I've been working before. End up
Yes.
meeting him where he needed some other assistance in his business, so we were just helping each other out. He noticed a weird thing where he's like, why are you so obsessed with systems? Because like normally people are not that excited about systems. Like it's not
Right.
something
It's
that
not a,
gets people going.
yeah.
And I was like, because I'm ready to get married and I need space. That's what I said.
Oh, wow.
He basically leaned back and had a look on his face that said challenge accepted, and now we're married. So
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah.
We're speaking each
Um,
other's languages.
we were speaking each other's languages, right? And up until meeting him, I'd been getting clear on like what kind of a husband I wanted. It turns out he was doing the exact same thing on what kind of a wife he wanted at the exact same time right before we met.
Wow.
I know,
Magic.
wild stuff that you can't even make up, right? And I'm like, vibration's real, universe is real, we create our reality. So I was just like gathering all this evidence as I was
Yes.
saying, and then that would give me more faith. So my husband, and granted, he does this for like 7 and 8 figure companies, but he took me from basically bleeding out money to a 60% profit margin and automated most of my business.
Wow. So
And now
talk,
we teach that to people. Yeah.
yes. Walk us through that. Yeah.
That took a while. Okay. That was a process. This was not like I had a mess going on because of my own psychology,
Yeah.
which is the case with most people. And we see it with a lot of his clients too, who
Yeah.
come in at the 7 and 8 figure range, and they're a disaster too. They're also bleeding out money. They also got people on staff that they should have fired 6 months ago. They're also making things more complicated than they need to be. The only difference between me is I didn't have ego about it. And when you're at like 7 or 8 figures, you think you did something and you have some ego. So that's the only difference. That's literally the only difference. But we'll see it there too, which is how we approach the conversation needs to be a little bit different because there's more ego involved. if that makes sense. Um,
That's hilarious.
I mean, it's what we've noticed, right? So, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a process, right? Because it's like I'm working through my own psychology and everything's a mess at first. My life got well, the business career side of my life got really messy first before we got to the space where it is now, where we just took a month off to get married and be with friends and family and go on our honeymoon, and the business, or my business, not just sustained, it made more money, even though neither of us were working or checking in or anything.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's the dream right there.
Yeah. So now it's like, oh, it works. Now let's start teaching it to people. And then, of course, he still does his consulting
Hmm.
for the more complicated ones.
Yeah. So there's multiple businesses, right, between the both of you, right?
Yeah, I mean, because we basically work with a lot of the same people and now we're married, we merged a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
because that would save us a ton of money on taxes, accounting, software, you
Yes.
name it, right? So we joke that I'm his first merger and acquisition.
That's great.
It
That's
didn't make sense from a financial and even to keep them separate. So we're like, we're
no,
paying double of everything and we work with a lot of the same people. So just on
right.
different aspects of the businesses.
So, when before you were having everything automated, what did your business look like on the back end?
A mess. I
Describe the mess. Bring it.
um
Yeah.
I had a lot of things all going on at the same time. So I had like a lot of systems, but they were very disjointed. I make a joke that they were put together with duct tape and bubble gum because what
Mm,
I was accustomed to was just work harder and you will make more money, just be more visible. Granted, I love visibility. I love doing podcasts. I'm more naturally creative. So to me, until, it got to be unsustainable, it wasn't an issue. But basically that's what it looked like, right? Was just a lot of disjointed different things going on. And the way that I like to describe it is, and the expert in neuroscience actually is the one who helped me with an analogy. I needed to start seeing my business like it was a car. The car
okay.
is just an engine. It's got parts, right? It runs with or without you. I mean, you got to be driving the thing, but like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But it's just a car. It exists outside of you and it's just a machine. If the brake light goes out, you're not automatically making it about you and your worthiness and all kinds of stuff, which is what most business owners do. You're just like, oh, the brake light's out. So
Right.
before, from a psychological perspective, I had way too much of my own self-worth wrapped up in the performance of my business, which is most business owners,
Most
let's be
people,
real.
yes.
And from the psychological perspective, I had to dislodge myself from that. And then from the actual like tactical perspective, I mean, it was just a mess. We had to turn it into like one machine that we
Hmm.
could optimize, not you have software over here, software over there, 15 different strategies going on all at the same time and not the proper support.
Okay. So it's really about streamlining,
Yep.
simplifying, and then automating it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is we see this, we had an intensive with a client the other day. And I've noticed with a lot of my clients at least, is that it's a lot of people not really chasing their actual desires. A lot of people are using their businesses as number one, their own like worthiness kind of
Hmm.
thing,
Measure,
the
yardstick. Yeah.
measure. So then their emotions are all over the place and you're all dysregulated.
Yes.
So that's number one. And then number two, a lot of people are using their businesses to avoid other things that they really actually want and desire. I'll give you an example. We were doing an intensive the other day with a client. And one of the questions I've started asking all our clients, right, is take money off the table. What do you actually want? Because everybody says, I want more money.
Hmm.
I want more money. I want more profit. I want more of this. I'm like, take money off the table. What do you want? Money's a non-issue. We're not talking about money. What do you want? And that's when I'll hear what people's true desires are. And then I'll start realizing, oh, you've been overcomplicating your business, right? You've been sabotaging your business. You've been doing all this stuff so that you would have some sort of a problem to fix that would keep you busy to avoid this thing over here that you actually truly desire.
And what is the thing, or what are some of those things, just as
In the
examples?
case of this person, she was also ready for her spouse. in the case of this person. But it could be, here's another one, right? We have a client now in our effortless revenue mastermind. She goes, I just want to be able to take time off. I'm like, you could literally do that now if you wanted
Wow.
to. But
And
she
people
didn't
don't
see it
trust
that
it.
way.
Yeah.
They don't trust it.
Okay. So we go back to the spiritual thing of trusting and surrendering.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
So sometimes I just want to be able to take like a week off, and I'm looking at her business. I'm like, you could literally do that now.
Mm,
Right? You just think that you need all these bells and whistles and extra fancy things. You don't. You just need to make a decision and do it and be and I'm like, and she goes, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, why not? She goes, what if the money runs out? I'm like, you've set up in your business in a way where it's not going to. And even if it does, do you think money's just going to stop? Like you just can't make money again?
yeah. Wow. Okay. Just taking a deep breath here. I'm just like letting it land because I feel like in what the half an hour or less, 25 minutes that we've been sitting together, you've already shared so much that like huge nuggets of like spiritual wisdom, business wisdom, and how all of those come together, and especially like the things that we avoid, like that is something that I haven't talked about very much on here. So yeah, and I'm kind of taking it in for myself too, kind of like I'm always like, is that me? Am I doing that? And yeah, interesting question. And like you said something about like the money piece was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about that? And even like maybe describing some of the, like some of the embodied aspects of it, right? There's mental, there's emotional, there's physical, sometimes even sensations, right? Like nervous system stuff.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, I grew up with the story money equals anxiety.
Yeah.
So anything having to do with money was just setting me off. So if I didn't have enough money, it would set me off. If I had too much money, it would set me off.
Mhm.
So that's why it was the hardest, because it was the one that was most intrinsically tied to the feeling of anxiety.
Yes.
So it almost
Yes.
didn't matter what I did. I had to learn how to regulate my nervous system,
Yeah.
not make more money
Right. Either in either direction, it would have dysregulated.
completely.
Yeah. And it sounds like there was like a zone of tolerance that was like, okay,
Around 20, 30,000 a month was my zone of tolerance. Yeah.
okay, okay.
So
Yeah. And that's different
I
from,
started going above that very quickly. And that's when shit went off the rails.
yeah. Right? When you like leave the zone of tolerance and you're like, okay, now we're dysregulated, it's too much, or now it's too little, my bank account is lower than I want it to be, right? Okay. And so, yeah, so what the sensations of anxiety, and so what skills did you use to support you through that, right? The heightening of anxiety.
Yeah, well, journaling is huge. So even this morning, right? Because we're all human, I was getting all flustered about something. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not about the outside circumstance. This is me. This is me. Let me go journal this out. Why am I so pissed and all this stuff? And that helps because I just get it out of my body. I get it out of my
Yeah.
system. Other tools were tapping. Other tool or emotional freedom technique, hypnosis. When I tell you I did it all, I literally did it all. But I would
And do
say
you do hypnosis on yourself now?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the EFT, once it was like really taught to me how to do it
Yeah.
and how to do it properly. And I was like, and it's funny because in the beginning I was really skeptical. I was like, this is all bullshit, but whatever. I'm going to surrender to it. Right. I'm going to surrender to it and I'm going to give it a shot because I got nothing to lose. So let's go. Literally had nothing to lose at that point. So I was like, I'm going. Right. And then I started seeing results really fast. So I would do like a hypnosis around receiving. And the next day I'd get free stuff at a bakery and I'd be like, huh? So again, just like building the evidence, like you create your
Uh,
reality and you just
I
have
love
to
it.
remove all the stuff that's in the way of you getting what
Yeah.
it is that you desire. I just started little by little building the evidence that it was true. And then, I started manifesting big stuff like my husband and moving to another country, stuff I'd been talking about for years. And suddenly it started happening like this really
Yes.
fast. Yeah.
Wow.
Those were more clean and less messy. So I could see why those manifested a lot faster than, for example, money, where there was a lot more emotional mess and dysregulation going on.
Yeah, and it was more closely tied to your identity because it was ancestral, it was so familial.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was tied to your and like to your Cubanness,
Yeah, of course.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then, I'm scratching the tip of the iceberg of everything my family went through, fleeing I mean, we had family members put in prison, work camps, people who had to flee the country overnight. My dad's dad had to flee overnight, basically. My
Mhm.
dad was sent to the United States at the age of 11 by himself, right, to
Was
get him
he's
out
like
of
Peter
there.
Pan?
Peter, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
right, it was like the same thing, but right before they named it, basically.
Got it, got it.
Yeah. And that's again, that's just, he didn't see my grandmother for 15 years because they wouldn't let her off the island. I mean, and that's literally scratching the surface. Political
Yeah,
prisoners as family members.
exactly.
And the thing is, I grew up in Miami where growing up, most of my friends were Cuban, right? Because Miami
Mhm.
was overrun by Cubans. It
Yeah.
still kind of is, but depending on the neighborhood. Now we got like all of Latin America there, but um or even if they weren't Cuban, they were like Colombian, and they were at the time they were like trying to get out of Colombia because of the issue with the cartels
Yeah,
in Colombia growing up, or there was just something. So I was like, oh, this is just normal. This is a part of being like Latin, like this is just like it
right.
was just around me all the time. So I
Yeah,
never thought of questioning it.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And just sort of jumping around for a moment, like you also wrote a book.
Oh yeah, when I was 25. Yeah. So that's when I was still the financial writer and I was still trying to figure out. I think that's when I was in this stage. So I have like these stages that I've created. Let me see if I can
Yeah,
remember them by heart. The first one is, basic biatch or basic Betty, and that's like the completely like dramatic female. Although I have shown this to men and they say it's similar but slightly different because their journey is a little bit different.
yeah,
They're ours, but they relate to it enough where they're like, oh, okay, I know how to plug in how this would work for a man, but here's what it is for a woman. You have like basic biatch, basic Betty, completely dramatic, not self-aware at all, just drama,
yeah.
drama, drama all the time, wounded feminine, basically. Then you go into the stage of awareness where you're like, oh, wait, maybe the problem's me. Right. So when I
Sure.
wrote that book, I was in that stage of awareness where I'm like, I think maybe the problem's me, right? And I thought a book was like the thing to do, and I mean, it kind of was. I mean, I got a bunch of speaking gigs at like financial companies over and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but I was just in that self-awareness space, and I was like, oh, okay, so here's how money works. I wrote it for me and because I was getting a bunch of questions from my blog. Uh, at the time. Then the next stage is what I call the huntress, right? And that's what I started going into when I started making money. It's like, okay, I'm
Mm.
taking responsibility now. Then I went into what I call wounded man, right? Sorry, dudes. I just can't think of another name right now for the archetype. And that's when I went way overboard. So that's like when the huntress goes overboard.
It's kind of like it's like hunting and then chasing money, and it just has an energy of desperation around it.
No, it's just like you've gone way too far into hustle
Got it.
and you're totally dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I've had clients in the past that, for example, they ran a salon and they did that for a number of years. And at some point, they were working 7 days a week. And they remember telling me stories of like, I remember sitting home and I was so exhausted that I sat in front of the TV and I didn't even turn it on. And then I just sat there for like hours, like with a turned off TV because I was just so fried.
Wow.
So it's stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's when we go overboard in what I guess in our spaces they would call like the masculine for women. Like we've gone too far on
Mm-hmm.
that side of the spectrum, and now we're all fucking dysregulated again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everything's about hustle and it's a mess and we're overworking and here come the hormone problems and here comes the adrenal fatigue and all that stuff. And that's actually quite difficult to get out of because most people end up having some really intense realizations about themselves
Yeah.
because the next stage of that is queen in training, and that's when you start rebuilding your business from a place where there isn't as much hustle, so you start focusing on scalability, systems, things like that. The thing that I didn't realize when I created this 3 years ago that I understand now is that has to come in conjunction with a lot of mindset work and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of inner healing.
Yeah.
because that's when everybody's stuff really starts to come up. They're like, no, 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 I can't possibly make money like that because I've made it this way the whole time. And if I'm not the one doing it, who's going to do it? And what do you mean machines are going to do all the work? And at this point, they had to work, right, to get to a certain level. And now the goal is now you have to actually work less. I mean, that throws people for a loop.
I mean, when you think about it, Amanda, like what you're talking about doing working in that way is completely new. Like
Yeah.
in the sense, like, yes, we had things like, I don't know, automotive companies with
Yeah.
automation, but people were running all of that. So you had those sort of bigger scale type of businesses like that. But in terms of I don't know, I think like for women especially who, 1973, we can finally get our own credit card. Like we have a less of that timeline to
Mhm.
practice some of these things of like not being the person in the trenches doing all the things of the
You'd be
business.
surprised because I see a lot of men struggle with it too.
Yeah,
Right. It's just that their journey of getting over it is a little bit different because they got different conditioning, but that ended up in the same place.
got it. Okay.
Right. And their conditioning is I'm the warrior.
Okay. And for women, it's I'm the martyr.
Yeah. That's a good way
Wow.
of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So it's
So that's
almost
what
like,
I'm saying. It's like I've shown this to men and they're like, we actually go through something very similar, but it's like different because A, they're different from us, right? The energy is different. Like for example, I'll give you an example. My husband can work way more hours than me. Like he just can because he has the testosterone to do it. I do not.
yeah,
And that's okay. We just like accept that and he doesn't want me working as much as him. For example.
yeah,
He would never want that for me.
yeah.
But I'm just giving that as like an example of how we're like physically different, right? We're psychologically different. And we've gotten different conditioning, but it's been damaging just the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, like I as a gender fluid person, like I'm not super like into like binary and stuff, but there is also like I know for myself in terms of like my age, aspects of my biology combined with age that have made like how I show up in my business, it's just had to change
It's
because
also
of my
seasons of
capacity.
life. I'm running
Exactly,
business
exactly.
differently as a married woman than a non-married woman. I
Yeah,
have other things I have to do now,
yeah.
or we've had clients come to us that they're ready to start a family. Okay, your business has to change.
Exactly, exactly. Like maybe going from one on one to one to many, and just
Hmm.
even just scaling on that simplest level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, men actually, what we've noticed, and it's interesting because a lot of my husband's clients are men. I'm like, wait a minute, they're like dealing with a lot of the same stuff. I'm over here thinking like women are in a silo or something, and I'm like, no, it's all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally all of us. It's just that their version of development and the journey that they had, it's like the difference between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's slightly
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, Amanda, what does your business look like now, both from the systems side of things and like just like financially? Like, and what does your day-to-day look like?
Oh, this is so good. Um,
You're like, I was waiting for this moment.
because it's like juicy now, right?
Yeah.
So six-figure business. So we're there, but now most of it's automated.
Mm, mhm.
That's the difference. And because most of it's automated, our profits went through the roof.
Wow.
So step one, number one was really like, we have to automate this and slash expenses, right? And then
Yes.
now we can
Yes.
start moving into making money. And in
Yeah.
my case, we have at least I have two main offers right now, and then I'll talk about what my husband does.
Hmm.
But basically it's all based on what is actually scalable.
Yeah.
So for example, in my case, we have like the YouTube mastery workshop. I'll get
Hmm.
into why I'm such a big fan of YouTube in a second, right? And why that
Yes.
works
Tell me about
and
it.
why that workshop exists, because that's a part of the question. And then we have our effortless revenue mastermind, which is an annual commitment. And basically you get access to every program I've ever taught, every program my husband and I have ever taught together. There's an order in which to go through the things. We meet twice a week on group calls, and you get access to us on Slack. everything's great. So we build up the recurring revenue, we build up the repeat business.
Yeah.
People get what they need. And then on the videos, it's like the more tactical stuff. And on the calls, that's where we're picking up all the mindset stuff. And that's
Okay.
where we're handling those things.
Okay.
So there's that, right? And then on my husband's side, he does consulting for equity. So
Yeah.
he works with more 7 and 8 figure businesses. Same thing. He's like a systems genius, right? They have more complicated problems. My husband loves to deal with complicated problems. He loves to go solve them, which is part of the masculine. They love to go solve problems. Right. The feminine is different. We don't want to solve fucking problems, right? But the masculine loves to do it. It's one of the ways in which they give. So he's fixing more complicated messes. Let's put it that way. And he does consulting for equity. So it's either on, hey, here's the VIP day, and basically the VIP day is the diagnostic where we really get under there and find out how bad this all is. And usually it's,
Okay.
oh, it's bad. He had a client recently that was bleeding out 50,000 a month.
Oh,
Yeah.
like just in expenses?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, wait a minute, what I was dealing with coming up on 7 figures, like all these people are dealing with it too. They're just dealing with it at
Just
another
a
level,
bigger
like
scale. Yeah.
just on a bigger scale, but it's the exact same thing.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then from there, depending on the business, then he's building up a portfolio of companies where
Mm-hmm.
he has equity. So that's like and that's scale.
Mm-hmm.
That's thinking a lot bigger. Like, hey, I'm not trying to run 5 businesses. I've got equity in 5 or
Mm-hmm.
6 businesses. So that's kind of where we're at with it. And then in terms of my business, most of that's automated. So
Yeah.
I mostly just do video now.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting back into podcast interviews and things like that, right? But basically, because he got so much space back for me. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. So when you join us in our mastermind, we've already pre-built all the automations. So it's not like we have to do that for people. We just get them on the right software, pop it into their accounts, they edit, they're good to go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
W-
we were the guinea pigs for all those automations.
So I have such a curiosity question. What are your favorite platforms that you use
YouTube.
as part of YouTube? So
YouTube
tell
is
me
my
more about
favorite.
that.
Yeah. So YouTube, and to give you an idea, I've tested YouTube on 3 different channels, right?
Yeah.
Because I had so much space that now I could just be the creative again. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, my favorite part. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to go around posting on Facebook 10 times a day because ain't nobody got time for that. And who knows what's going on with all the stuff happening. Like now I'm back to it, but I was like, I really just got to focus on the most leveraged thing. The
Yeah.
most leveraged thing when I started comparing all of them was obviously YouTube. And the thing about YouTube is you have over 80% of households that make over 6 figures a year, US households that make 6 figures a year, they're hanging out on YouTube.
Mm.
The next closest one is Facebook, around 60%.
Okay.
Like no other platform even comes close
Wow.
in
Okay.
terms of high quality leads. LinkedIn's like around 50. And TikTok's bottom of the barrel, but we already knew that. So
Wow.
in terms of
Okay.
yeah, in terms of percentages. It's also like leads from YouTube convert at 3 to 4 times higher rates.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Right. And we tested this stuff out with a new channel, which I'll get to just to like test the theories. And we found that this is true, right? This is actually true. So that's one of the reasons why. And the other reason is because of the longevity. I can make one video, it's getting me views and leads for years, so long as it's optimized correctly.
Right. Right. Which is the key is SEO optimization.
100%, my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately for me, because I'd done all the marketing for banks, I already knew about SEO optimization. We were just doing blogs back then, not videos. So that's my favorite, right? To the point where we started 3 channels, right? And I was like, you know what? Because the other thing that happened, we have 3 channels. So we have like my channel that I've had for 10 years that I've been slowly fixing little by
Yeah.
little with what I know now. We have a channel just on mindset, which I only really just started taking seriously. And even yesterday, I post new video, #1 ranking on the channel, got leads, boom. And it's a brand
Wow.
new channel.
Okay.
And then we started one because we live in other countries now for expats because we were getting so many questions about our lifestyle.
Yes.
Like
I follow that one.
you follow that one, right? Well, we turned that one into 6 figures in sales in 90 days.
Wow. That's crazy.
YouTube's my favorite, right? We weren't doing anything for a month on social media, and all three of those channels were growing on their own.
Okay. Okay.
So
Great to
YouTube's
know.
my favorite, right? And now that we've like really, and we teach that in our YouTube mastery workshop. And to give you an idea, we took one person who took that workshop and they're a Canadian bookkeeper. And they're like, I'm not attracting any Canadians to my channel. And I'm like, okay, well, let's start optimizing this. And within 6 weeks, here come the Canadians. She had a smaller channel, so it was easier to do
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Not like one I've had for 15 years that I got to go fix because I didn't know what I was doing.
And you have to go through each video.
I mean, I'm little by little, right? I'm experimenting and actually reading the data, right? Then we have another client who took that one, and he's a relationship coach. He coaches single women on how to get their husbands, basically, or how to have more harmonious relationships. I probably is
Yeah.
probably a better way of saying that, because he works with a lot of married women too. And he was posting on Facebook like 10 times a day. And he's like, it's just getting harder and harder and harder on Facebook, where I got to write like 10 long form posts a
Yeah.
day to make
Yeah.
almost 7 figures. Like, that's ridiculous. I'm looking for something more leveraged. Within 6 weeks, we had him at like 40,000 views a month.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that's YouTube's my favorite, right? And that's where we spend most of our time focusing. And
Yeah.
again, now it's easier, right? Because now like we've gotten into a flow about it, and now I'm starting
Yes.
to layer in more short form stuff and
Okay.
really learning that. But all-time favorite, YouTube.
Yeah. So tell the listener how they can find you on YouTube. Like, what's the name of the channel?
So the business one is Make Money Your Honey. So that's where we talk about, like, yesterday I posted a video on like this one social media post got us 60 free leads. Right. So I'll do that on
Yeah.
that channel. Right.
Okay.
There's entrepreneur. And the reason why I have 3 different channels is because of the SEO.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
It's very
Otherwise,
specific.
YouTube doesn't understand what is going on and doesn't know who to push the content to.
Okay.
Yeah. So clarification, right?
Yes.
The
That's
second
important.
channel is Entrepreneur Expat, which is the one you know about, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, hey, we're living this expat life. We interview people living in expats living in all kinds of different countries. And then in addition to that, we're in Mexico right now. So there's a lot of content about Mexico, but we're answering questions like, how do you get a bank account in another country, or what's the visa process like? And that's what cities to check out in the countries, things like that.
Yeah.
So that one's more like lifestyle, but also, yeah, mostly more lifestyle. And then the next last one is the one that's just about mindset and manifesting and spirituality and things like that, which is like brand new, right?
Yeah.
But it's already generating leads. Maybe we got like 101 subscribers and it's generating leads.
What's the
This
name of
is
that one?
mindful success path.
Mindful Success Path.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I
people
love
are like,
it.
3 YouTube channels. I'm like, once you figure out how this thing works, that's actually pretty easy to maintain. The hard part is the beginning, but the way that we've broken it down is we have a workshop. If you can dedicate like 3 hours to the workshop and 4 hours to executing, you're already seeing results.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. You sold it to me just now.
We'll get you signed up. We're teaching it next week. We'll get you signed up. We're teaching it
Okay.
live. Yeah. And a part of that, right, going back to what you were saying before about what's changed in the business, is I didn't
Yeah.
pay attention to any of that stuff before. I was like, yeah, my clients are making money, but I didn't know, like, oh, all you need to do is dedicate 3 hours here and 4 hours over here based on what the most successful clients have done. And you're going to get, I had no idea. I wasn't tracking any of that stuff.
Mm.
Probably should, because it makes things easier to sell.
Incredible. Like, feel like this whole talk, this whole episode is like just so full. I feel like I just had a meal because I just feel like deeply satisfied.
Oh, I'm glad.
No, it was like you just dropped so many gold nuggets in here, and yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your process and your, like, what you do now and what your life looks and feels like now, and showing other people what's possible for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me and inviting me on, because like I said, I haven't done this in about 2 years while I
Yeah.
was going through all that stuff. And I'm very excited to start talking about this stuff more. And this is actually the first time I've ever been able to do it very succinctly. So
Yeah.
thank you for giving me the space to do that.
That's beautiful. I love that, Amanda. Thank you again.
Thank you.